When people are coming to medicine, it's not because you're broken. It's not because you're faulty. It's because we've forgotten who we are innately. Before the stories, before the addictions, before the traumas.
It just loves to show us where we are. And that's what integration is. It's making those choices of like, okay, the medicine showed me this. So now what do I want to do with it?
Welcome to another episode of Entrepreneurs in Recovery. I'm your host, Jesse Harless. Thank you for joining us today. If you are new to this show, welcome. And if you would, we're on YouTube. So go ahead on YouTube, like and subscribe. And if you would leave a review on Spotify, iTunes. The reason why I ask for this every week is the more that people leave reviews or like and subscribe on iTunes, more people are finding the show, and I'm getting amazing guests. So thank you so much for doing that. And yeah, so with that said, I am really excited about today's episode. Today's episode is with Patrick and Michelle Fishley, and they own the business Soul Reflections. And this is a really unique business that is guiding journeys with Ibogaine. And if you want to learn more about Ibogaine and you want to learn more about just the whole process of it, what it is, how to be, in the integration process of it, the safety concerns, we get into all this on today's episode. It was such a fulfilling episode for me to learn more as I dive deeper into these different medicines and share them with you with all these amazing guests. So I really, really hope you enjoyed today's episode. And also check out, all the work that I'm doing right now with the psychedelic experience curation and psychedelic concierge work, so that, I'm linking with people like Patrick and Michelle for people to find these incredibly safe and just effective and also deeply life-changing spiritual experiences. So I really hope you enjoyed today's show. Hey, Patrick and Michelle, welcome to the show.
Hi.
Thanks for having us.
Jesse, how are you?
Oh, I'm great. Yeah, I'm really excited to have you both on the show. We connected, I don't know, at least a month ago. And so I'm glad that we're finally here. There's been a lot of talk, I feel, about Ibogaine, and there's just been a buzz, I feel like, especially in the last month or so about it. And I'm so glad to have you both on to hear about the work that you guys have been doing for years and your background. And just to dive right in, because I think it's a really important conversation to have right now for so many reasons. So with that said, typically I'd like to hear about someone's story and their backstory of like how they came into the medicine. And because we have you both on today, maybe we could just do a high level. I know you both are nurses. You've worked in the hospital setting for like a combined, almost 40, 50 years of experience. And I know you've done at least 1,500 Ibogaine sessions, Iboga, Ibogaine sessions, and served so many people. So before we dive into that, I would like to know, maybe at a high level, maybe we could start with Michelle. Like, how did you make that transition from going into the medical world and then coming into wanting to serve a medicine like Ibogaine and Iboga?
I think it's like most things in your life that are like life-changing. They just come into your field. So it was actually Patrick that started, really. And so he started with Ibogaine. He started as a medical person, reading all the EKGs and all that kind of stuff. And then at the time, we had young kids. They were still 4. We still have 4 kids at home. And so, we just started, just in that way of just like in that supervisor kind of a way, and then as a sitter kind of a way, but like the medical provider. And then that progressed over time. And as we did more of it, we realized that really that was where our heart was. When you work in a hospital, it can be kind of depressing. You kind of see the extreme, right? You see the extreme of disease, you see the extreme of aging, and it just sometimes feels like you're working at the back end. You're working at the already sick, already, helpless kind of way, and you're not really helping people. You're helping people. Like, don't get me wrong, the job is rewarding and beautiful, and we loved it, but you feel like you're missing a component, and it's terrible for chronic disease. So, the current medical system is not really set for chronic disease. It's acute care, right? So we try to smush chronic illness into acute care settings, and it doesn't work. So for me, especially starting with plant medicine, realized there was so much we could be doing before people got to hospital. Before people got really sick, before these chronic diseases like totally debilitated them. So that felt really good. And so the switch actually to continue that movement from working at the hospital to doing this full time took over a decade, but it was obvious for me. Anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. And I appreciate, I know that was really high level, but I appreciate that share because I know a little bit about your backgrounds. So that's perfect. And Patrick, what about you? I'd love to hear a little bit about that at a high level.
Well, it really was about the medicine calling, and like Michelle said, I started working with Ibogaine back 2012. And, immediately I could see that the efficacy of this was amazing for, interruption of addictions and any kind of addiction, right? Interruption of that. And then there was a real psycho-spiritual, which I don't like that word, but the spiritual component of it with using Ibogaine. And it really made me think about my practice as a critical care nurse, where I've seen so much and dealt with life and death so much and been present on, hundreds of people who are passing and feeling their life force, slip out from them as it passes and they transition. And it just made so much sense. When the medicine calls, you can hear it. And so it's, we really moved forward with that part of it. And when I started working with this medicine, I realized that everything I had done, all my training, all those years, all those different levels were really preparing me for this, So now, I'm not sitting in front of intravenous catheters and all these fancy things we have in the ICU, but still the human component, seeing a person for all the systems, because all the systems matter when you're working through with these medicines, coming as a whole person, right? So it was really about getting ready for this. And so I really feel now, instead of like Michelle was saying, it's not really great for chronic in the hospital, it's more acute. It's in the hospital, it's like walking around with a great big dust broom following the elephant, if you know what I mean. Cleaning up the mess as it's laid down on the ground. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what we do. There's nothing really preventative as a rule laid in. There's little pieces, but nothing a lot. So now we can do a lot of preventative. We can help intervene when things are starting or before they get too much. And yeah, some people come and they're at the end of their rope, so to speak, and with no hope. And we see a lot of that, but we're able to intervene with that as well. And we just help people, find it for themselves, because this medicine's about, your mind and about you and helping you discover. Yeah. So that's kind of a nutshell.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And I'm really curious about the medicine itself. So, I definitely want to get into some of the components that it has a big buzz around, which is addiction and whatnot, but that's really not where it started. So I'm curious about this medicine, Iboga, Ibogaine. If you could just tell us a little bit about it and how it differentiates from, let's say, ayahuasca or 5-MeO-DMT, and why would someone choose Iboga or Ibogaine as a medicine choice?
Iboga is different than any other of the medicines, and it's really kind of hard to describe why until you've experienced it. It's one of those things that demands experience of to really fully understand. But traditionally, if we think back, I mean, they've been using Iboga in Gabon for thousands of years. So, I mean, who knows? At least there's evidence of it being used at least 2,000 years at the minimum. So, they weren't using it for addiction back then because addiction wasn't really a problem, 2,000 years ago, as like it is now. And so they were using it for spirituality. They were using it to connect to nature. And that's what they attribute to understanding the jungle. That they had some understanding, obviously, before Iboga entered into their sphere. But once they were able to take the medicine, they were able to better communicate with the plants, the trees, just the spirits of the forest. And if you ever get a chance to go and be with them as they walk through the jungle and have them explain to you the different plants and trees and how the ants work with that tree so that it produces this, so that we can use it for that, they're like walking encyclopedias. It is unreal, the knowledge they have about the forest around them. And it blows my mind beyond anything I can describe. And so that's what they use it for. They use it, and obviously for healing. They use it when they have a problem and they need it. They need help with it. They use it to talk to their ancestors, and so that's the main purpose of it. But it also loves the human brain. Iboga knows. I know this for a fact that Iboga knows that's our biggest problem is our mind. It is that we don't use our mind properly. We are very intellectual as especially North Americans, and I'd say probably Europeans, and we get stuck in the head. We really, really do. And we think that that's where it's at. And we forget to listen to the heart. We forget to listen to the soul. We forget to listen to the body, and we're really stuck now because we've forgotten how to listen to those other parts of ourselves. And so that is the main purpose right now for the medicine. And addiction is in that sphere. Addiction happens because we've forgotten to listen to our heart, soul, and body, or we've forgotten how. And so I think that's why we have addiction. Addiction's there to wake us up. Addiction is there to say, you're not doing so great, right? You're not managing well. You're allowing these other things to take over. And so for me, I don't know if that fully answered your question. I think I got it all, but that's the main purpose of Iboga and Ibogaine, is to help us with our mind.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Mm-hmm. You have anything to add, Patrick, to that?
No, that's pretty much it. It's a real medicine of the mind, and it helps us to know our mind and it helps us to remember, right? So we have to remember too, when people are coming to medicine, it's not because you're broken. It's not because you're faulty. It's because we've forgotten who we are innately before the stories, before the addictions, before the traumas. We've forgotten who we were at the core. So it's a real remembering. It helps us to really remember. Doesn't help us to forget the different traumas, but it helps us to separate ourselves from that emotional attachment and have more clearer thought around it and remember who we are. And, and all of us, freaking awesome. It took a lot for us all to be here, waking up every morning. So I'll add that part of it.
And so you talked about, Michelle, you talked about connecting with the jungle, connecting with nature. And I think that could be something that is a really critical component to meeting different types of medicines. It could be maybe even starting with psilocybin, connecting to nature. And then, maybe someone finds ayahuasca, connecting to nature, and then, peyote and connecting with nature, and then Iboga or Ibogaine. And so I think about my personal experiences with these different medicines and my experience with connecting with nature and how important that has been for my spiritual journey too. And so, you guys have both been initiated into these indigenous traditions, and it's Wheatree tradition. Did I say that right? Wheatree?
Yeah.
Yeah. So how is that, like, being initiated into these indigenous wisdom traditions? How has that changed your understanding of this medicine and the potential of it? Because I think that that's really important to be tuning into that side of where this medicine comes from. Like you said, who knows, 2,000 years old, 5,000, we don't know, but it's a long time. It's come a lot more than this renaissance that's currently happening. So can you speak to that? How important was that initiation into those lineages?
Well, I mean, I could say it was everything. It was absolutely everything life changing for the initiation part of it. Because we had worked with this medicine for a few years prior, and really fell in love with it and really started to understand it, and worked well with it. When we became initiated quite a few years ago, the initiation into like the Bwiti, or for the women's branch of it, the Mabundi, where you're meeting the medicine. It's about that. It's where you get your spiritual name. It's where you go in so deep, and it's with like copious amounts of medicine. This is not like a traditional healing, like Western dosing, flood dosing. This is copious amounts, but they take you in deep, and you really meet it face to face, the spirit of this medicine. And there's a real understanding, or at least a beginning of an understanding, because it's a lifelong journey. It's a lifelong stewardship with this medicine. You don't just go in there and learn everything. And just the connectivity we have with the medicine, with the spirit of the medicine, is that much greater because of it. And we can hear it talk a lot better now. We understand how it moves and why it does what it does. We see a lot of people when they're using at different clinics, and they talk about, it's spiritual and this and that. But, a lot of people don't really understand what that means. When people are going into a flood dose with this medicine, you're actually going and connecting into the spirit world. This is how this medicine works. And, and it's real. And there's lots and lots of things on the other side that you need to help guide through. I mean, when it comes down to it, anyone who is facilitating properly, we're all just kind of holding the ladder while you climb up on top and you dig out your eaves trough with all the junk. You do all the work. We're there to help guide you and keep you safe, and give you tips and such like that. And that's what any good facilitator will say. But it really made a strong connection. And it also makes us look at ourselves. When you're in that initiation, you really look at yourself. You can't do this medicine and serve it without looking at yourself all the time, because we're all evolving. We all have flaws. Day to day, things can change. And so we need to be constantly looking at it. It reminds us daily, when we're doing things of where we need to be, and and different things like that.
Yeah.
So really grateful for those initiations and that connectivity, and those daily reminders of what we need to be doing.
And for me, it taught me to respect the medicine even more. That there's even more I don't know. I don't know what I don't know. You know what I mean? Like it's the tradition itself that goes. The Bwiti tradition is incredibly deep. So it takes decades to learn, of constant engagement. To really understand and really advance in this tradition, when you're living there in Gabon, you have to know like 2,000 different plants in the jungle, what they do and how they work. You have to know. So they take it seriously. And I think sometimes that gets lost in translation. And I think we don't always appreciate what we're doing. When we're working with these medicines, we don't always appreciate where we're going, because we just don't know until we know, and so it's this depth that hopefully you're learning The thing with medicine work is it never takes your choice away.
Mm.
So it doesn't fix anybody who doesn't want to be fixed. You know what I mean? And I think that is one of the most important things to talk about is it doesn't, just because you take Iboga doesn't cure you of some personality trait or some, way of thinking if you don't want it to. Because the point of being human is to have choice. That is our power. And Iboga is never going to take your power away. You always get to choose. And it's one of the things we talk about most when we talk to people with addiction is, look, I know you're coming to us, to this medicine to help you with your addiction. But at the end of the day, the medicine doesn't take your choice away. It's not a magic pill. You still have to decide.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's what it teaches you. When you do your initiation, you learn who you are.
Mm-hmm.
You learn to respect the medicine, and you really learn to respect the worlds in which you're entering, which is the world of your mind, the spirit world, connecting to your soul. There's positive and negatives in that world, just like there's positive and negatives in this world. It's not all angels, and, we have to be careful. We have to be mindful of what we're doing when we're in there. We can cause harm to people.
Definitely. And the other thing that helps us really learn is how to trust ourselves too, and how to stand really firm and complete in ourselves. That's the rites of passage.
Where you don't get medicine, by the way.
You don't get medicine with that one, but that's part of this tradition. The rites of passage are coming into adulthood and into your own, and it really helps you to learn to stand fast, because we need to stand fast, not waver. We need to stand like a big tree with big roots all the way down. So when the wind blows, you move a bit, but you're not being ragdolled. And so that's one of the other things that really teaches us too, is trusting ourselves and being able to have confidence, but humility moving forward with things.
Yeah. So I have a lot of questions that came up and thank you for sharing that. I think it makes a lot of sense to me, especially with the initiation. It's like an initiatory medicine. And of course, like you hear, medicine is oftentimes 10% or 20% in the medicine, and then 80% is what happens after, right? And so you have that opportunity with any medicine, but I think with a medicine like this and with the type of experience it provides, and again, just for clarity, I have never done Ibogaine or Iboga, and it's something that I'm curious. And I've interviewed people about the medicine, and I'm definitely becoming more curious. I've had other initiations into other medicines, and I've certainly had really big integration processes, or processes that are, some of these medicines can be destabilizing. And even if you've done all the prep work, and I was really surgical with a lot of these medicines I did because of my background in abstinent sobriety, 15 years, black and white thinking, as black and white as it can be. And with a little nuance. And then of course, when I got into psychedelics, that's when there was a lot more gray areas to understanding addiction, understanding the root of addiction. And from my understanding, Patrick, you had like a 50-year addiction to nicotine, and there's a world of addiction you've come from. And you're even in the documentary Dosed, which is about a woman who has addiction, and you helped her and with these different processes. So I'm curious about, for those who are looking to utilize Iboga or Ibogaine to impact and to heal addiction, which at the root is trauma, at the root is more than just, hey, I'm just choosing to do this. And some people start the process as choosing, and then eventually it becomes something that's a neurological addiction, something much deeper than just the physical substance. So, or the behavior addiction. So in your experience, with what is it about Ibogaine that's so effective for treating addiction?
Well, I think, like, if we can look at Ibogaine and Iboga as the same here, in the sense that there's Ibogaine and Iboga. That's where we mostly get, or a lot of times get, Ibogaine from. There are other plants that have Ibogaine in it, but Iboga still tends to be the one with the most. So Iboga helps with the mind, right? So it attaches to, and I think I've heard recently, at least 5 different neurotransmitters in the mind and the brain. Like, so there's a physical thing that happens. It attaches to these neurotransmitters, and it helps to rewire them or to heal them or whatever it is, right? So it helps that in that process. So when we talk about addiction, a lot of times we're talking about dopamine. And I heard a really great analogy is dopamine is the hormone of more, you know? So the more dopamine we get, the more dopamine we want. The more dopamine we get, the more dopamine we want. So Iboga helps to reset that back to sort of pre-whatever level.
Baseline.
You know, more of a baseline level. But it also helps with some other neurotransmitters, and you'd have to get somebody more sciencey than me to be able to explain that better. So that's sort of like the physical. It also helps rewire the brain. Like, it lights up different parts of the brain. It has, it impacts the default mode network. It does all sorts of really crazy things in the brain. But then it also helps us connect to our spirit, to our soul, to ourselves. So there's that spiritual component. And it also helps us heal different things in the body. You know, so it's anti-inflammatory, it's great for the gut, you know, all these great things. So I think that's why Iboga helps. Like, my feeling is that's why Iboga helps so much, is because it helps mind, body, soul. It doesn't just address one thing. And sometimes that can be frustrating when people come to medicine because they want the spiritual. They think that's where it only lies. They're very, very focused on a psychedelic experience. A lot of this work, especially when it's doing stuff in your mind, doesn't feel psychedelic at all. And that's one of how I think Iboga really differs from a lot of medicines, is sometimes with Iboga, people will be like, oh, I need more medicine, I don't feel high. Meanwhile, we go to stand them up, take them to the bathroom, and they can barely walk. So you've had enough medicine, but it's working in your mind, and it's not going to take you out into that spiritual space, into that realm of whatever, where you're seeing fantastical things, because that's not where the work needs to be done. So this is a medicine of work. And as our teacher always says, Iboga is not for lazy people. No. And that means it's not for people who are serving it. And really who he was addressing is, if you're going to serve this medicine, you can't be lazy. So he's talking to us. And also, if you're going to take this medicine, you got to do the work. Iboga's not going to do all the work for you. It's going to meet you where you're at. It's going to do the work. When that you're willing to do, it will match you there. And so I think that's one of the biggest reasons why Iboga's and Ibogaine are so successful.
Yeah. You know, and one of the things that our teacher, Papa Zastan, he said to us recently is, you know, when there's been a big shift, now be it physical or psychological or addictive or whatever, it doesn't even matter. But when there's been a big shift, he says, you know, that's when the work begins. That's when you really have to be careful, because the other side knows there's been a shift, and they're going to do everything in its power to get you back. And, you know, over here in the Western world, we talk about the loops of our mind, and, you know, it's easy to slip back on our loops. So we're really talking about the same things, but they're talking from a more traditional, rudimentary, spiritual, naturistic way. And we're talking about a mumbo jumbo over here, you know, fancy words and things and colors. And it's really important that that's where all the work starts. And you had mentioned earlier, the integration part, that's where it starts, you know. And I always say that, you know, when you're taking these medicines, I mean, that's in that moment when we're taking the medicines and we have that psychedelic experience or whatever it is, you know, that's magical. I mean, it just is, it's magical. But if we don't apply practical application of it following an integration, then it really is no more than just a magic trick that happened. And that's sad, because these medicines have such tremendous amounts of knowledge and wisdom to share with us, you know. The other thing that Michelle alluded to, and I wanted to just mention, is, you know, the differences between some of these medicines, and with Iboga, what sets Iboga differently is Iboga is not a true hallucinogenic. It's a neurogenic, which means to walk in the dream, to create, kind of like dreamscaping. And so, it's not a cookie cutter where you take it, and with DMT, if you take it, you're going to have a certain thing. Everyone who takes mushrooms, usually sees certain things, or there's some things that are indicative of the DMT molecule.
Mushrooms
And so with this though, it's every time you take it, everyone who takes it can be so differently, because it's about, as much as it's about going way out and into ancestral realms and spiritual realms, it still comes down to grounding us, bringing us right here, right now, to walk. Because we have to walk grounded in our life, not with our head in the stars, walked and grounded. So yeah, that's another difference between this.
Yeah, Iboga really likes to remind us we're supposed to be living this human experience, that we're not supposed to be seeking all the time, to be going out into the spiritual side of things, that we're really supposed to be present in this moment right now.
Yeah.
And it will often bring people into the present, like dramatically so, where they're kind of, and again, it's then they go, I don't think I feel so present. I feel so here that I must need more medicine because I can't be high, which isn't the point. The point is the medicine is showing you this is what it feels like to be present. This is what it feels like to feel a calm equilibrium, to feel in your body, so that so that moving forward, you have that space to come back to and say, oh, I remember how that felt.
Yeah.
There's a song that ties it up, right? You don't always get what you want, but you'll get what you need, from the Rolling Stones, and that's what it is. And so we have, especially with these medicines, we need to remember when we come into these medicines that we need to ask ourselves, are we coming for this dog and pony show, as this experience, this grant, so I can have bragging rights with my friends and talk about all these things? Or am I coming to work? That's why these medicines are here, all of them, for us to work. The fact that they have some fantastical experiences that go with it, that's secondary. There's nothing fantastical about healing PTSD and about the memories that go along with it. There's nothing fantastical about that, but it is real work, real healing, and that's why people come to this.
Yeah.
So it's intentional, right?
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, when you look at the reasons why people have addictions and in how they actually recover from addiction, I think a big piece that's often missed is for you to actually change these patterns that didn't start with alcohol, didn't start with porn, it didn't start with what you're actually using now. It started way before that. It's interrupting those patterns. They probably were some type of injuries in childhood, could have been PTSD or stressors that are just repeatedly happening over time. But to actually change that later on as an adult, it's obviously going to be not an overnight fix, especially when your identity is a certain way. You probably, if you have addiction, and when I mean addiction, I mean you could have addictions to your pain. You can get addicted to the pain, the story that comes up in your mind that is telling you that you're stuck in the past, and that is an addiction. That then will lead to food addiction, sugar addiction, all the common things that we see today. But to actually interrupt that, it's changing your identity. It's changing your purpose, right? Or not even changing a purpose. It's having a purpose. Oh, wow. So a lot of what I see with psychedelics, and it's not just psychedelics. I mean, this can happen in breath work. It can happen in different types of things. But with psychedelics, it seems like it takes it to the 1000x level. Some of these experiences, and people will have, like you said, a present, actual moment, not hallucinating. It's not hallucinating. You're having an experience that is so visceral and so gut level, soul wrenching, that it starts to show you there's more. There's more here. There's more to learn about you. There's more to learn about nature. There's more to learn about whatever God is. There's more. And I think that's where purpose comes into play. where people feel that there's a more grounded reason for being here. And it doesn't have to be this grand reason, but there's something more. And I think that's often missed in the healing journey of addiction is finding a reason to be here, to hold on, to not sabotage. It's so easy to do that every single day and get caught in the loops. And it sounds like Ibogaine can really disrupt that, put you into the present moment.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like you have a new set of eyes. They're fresh. It's like a reset almost. So it sounds like to me.
It really helps us to connect to who we are, who we really are. And that's the part that we're so disconnected from in this modern age. Mm-hmm. We're so disconnected, we're like the unconscious traveler moving through. And so when we become really connected, then that's it. And, one thing I hear a lot from different people, it's like 2 or 3 months out from an experience like Iboga, Ibogaine, or other things, ayahuasca and such, is that, they'll be like 2 or 3 months out, it's like, well, I think it's all gone. I think it's all worn off now because like the stuff I was trying to treat, it's just everywhere. It's just everywhere now. I mean, it's even more than it was. I don't know, maybe I broke myself. I'm not sure. And we hear this all the time. And I remind people it's not because you're broken. It's actually, there's no more than there was already. Because the one thing is for certain, life keeps on lifing. Mm-hmm. It doesn't stop just because you ate of the Holy Grail or you did whatever. It doesn't stop. But what happens is once you know and once you see it when you're in medicine, you can't unsee it. So there's with Iboga, there is that Iboga kind of afterglow, this window, when you have all these different, all this norepinephrine and serotonin and dopamine, and you're feeling great, you're feeling bulletproof, so to speak, for a few months. And as it slowly dissipates, that's when people start to think, oh, it's gone, something's happening, I can see all this stuff. But really, the stuff was all there before. You're just able to see it now clearly. And that's the thing. That's where our choice comes in. That's where all this happens. That's, that's the point. We see it, and it's always going to be there. And so what we just have to remember is, practicing our answers, practicing what we learned, what we were told. And, it does get easier. And life is about navigating through all the little bombs that are in front of us, because it's never going to stop. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter how successful you are. There's always going to be things thrown at you from life. And it's the successful people have learned how to navigate through there. And so it's all we have to do is to trust ourselves. That goes back to trusting ourselves again now after the medicine has shown us, and to keep connected. And, you can keep this medicine of Iboga, you can keep it activated and active forever. It doesn't have to fade off, because there's a spirit. It's not dose-based, it's spirit-based, And so that's part of the integration. And that's the beauty of this medicine, is it will stay with you and it will show you. That boils into having a good community as well, because a lot of people, who especially do this medicine, don't have a lot of people to talk to afterwards. And people don't understand, even ayahuasca people who've done that many times, really don't understand what Iboga is like. I mean, it just makes sense, right? And so having a good, strong community as you're integrating is super important,
And I think what you touch on there is big, which is stories. Stories of the mind.
Yeah.
And Iboga loves to show us our stories. It certainly did me. I had this one experience where I was sitting there with medicine. And, I think I'm doing really good. I think my mind is clear. And I'm just waiting for the medicine to tell me something, show me something, whatever, And then all of a sudden I hear in the music, think it, think it, think it, think it. And I'm like, what? And then it's like the curtain, pulls back and I can see all the stories in my mind. I can see all of the stories I make up, I talk about, I reiterate, I go over all the time in my mind. And just because I see that in that moment doesn't mean they go away. It means now I have choice. Instead of those stories being behind the curtain, me not really realizing they're there, they're now in the forefront and I can see them. And that can be a hard thing for people. They're like, oh my God, I just like, all those stories are still there. And we're like, yeah, because now you get to choose. Okay, the story pops up and I get to go, nah, I don't, it's just a story of silly mind, I can just dismiss it and let it go. It doesn't need to be a part of my personality anymore. And it was frustrating for me because, I thought I'd done so much work already, right? And, oh yeah, I've been doing work and I've been clearing these. And then just see them to that extent with the medicine was quite profound. And then and they still there, they're still pop up. But, I really saw them in the beginning. Like it was constant. And I just had to just let them go without any attachment to them, without getting upset with myself, without, being disappointed or thinking I'm failing, but just go, oh, there it is again, and then let it go. And it's amazing how much time and energy we waste inside our mind on these stories, on who we think we are, on the ego, on our personality, all those things. So Iboga loves to show us that. It just loves to show us where we are. And that's what integration is. It's making those choices of like, okay, the medicine showed me this. So now what do I want to do with it? Do I want to do nothing and just continue the way I am? And most people are like, no, because they've come to the medicine for that reason, right? And so you have to do that work. And it takes time. It takes time to retrain the brain out of those old habits.
It's not really easy.
No.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And I think, there's a lot of people that have had a rough go these last few years, and they didn't have such a rough go before that, or at least they didn't perceive that. But when life slowed down with COVID, and then they got into their minds and they get into some of the deeper stuff that popped up, I feel like people really became anxious and depressed quite a bit, as we saw even statistically what happened COVID and post-COVID that we're in now. I feel there's people who are struggling even more with the uncertainty. And so I'm curious about the integration process. This is something that every guest that I come on who's into psychedelics, we get into because, and I know you guys are both trained in Being True to You certification, which is because we've had Deanne on the show, Deanne Adamson, and I just love that there's something out there for people to learn about integration, learn about addiction, learn about these processes of the mind. And I'm curious though, with the integration process with Ibogaine, what does that look like? Because you talked about, Patrick, community, which is just essential. Honestly, if I just was to be really honest, if I grew up as a child into early adulthood with community, and I doubt I would have jumped into heroin addiction. I doubt I would have jumped into cocaine addiction. I doubt I would have dove into a lot of these addictions, just straight up. Like if I had communal capital, a tribe I was with, but I didn't, right? And many of us don't. So having this idea of integration, community with a medicine like Ibogaine, which I know is a big medicine, what does that process look like? What does integration look like for Ibogaine? Because you said it can last a month or two. That's a long time where you can have these benefits.
Yeah. So like the quick backstory of that, we had a retreat center in Costa Rica, and it was doing well, whatever. We went to Africa, and she was in the women's village, I was in the men's village. We both got this message at the same time that we need to come back home, back to Canada, build community, because this is a community medicine. It's a tribal medicine, and we need to really build on it, because when you're running retreats every 2 weeks, constantly, you can do so much. And let's be honest, the integration is the responsibility of the participant. It really is. But we need to be accountable and responsible for what we're doing, what we're serving, and how we're using this medicine. So there's a lot that goes with it. So we left everything, came back. We weren't sure how we were going to do it, didn't even know what to do, but we've been an online community. And so the reasons are for this. There's that Iboga afterglow period, it can be like 2-3 months, it can be 9 months, it can be up to a year with all this extra Ibogaine that's into your fat cells and slipping up into your neurons and keeping you satiated, and there's dopamine hits and serotonin hits and all these really good things that help you feel great. It's in those times, it's in those months when you're feeling great. That's where the work has to happen. And some people like, oh, I feel really good, so I don't need to do anything. I'm great, and that's slippery slopes, because in that moment is where we have to build new routines, build new habits, new ways of being, with this whole idea of neurogenesis, neuroplasticity, this being able to learn new things, really well. If we're not careful, we can learn the old things even better than we did before. I did. The first time I did Iboga, I wanted to quit smoking. And just for 2 weeks, I didn't even care. And I for some reason, I made a stupid decision, like, well, maybe I'll just vape a little bit until I kind of get my head around this thing. And within a week, I was back up to 2 packs a day of cigarettes, and it was just, I did it even better, So it's really important during the integration process to have a community that can hold you accountable, that can help teach you, that you can bounce things off of, and you can check in. You would have had people to check in. One of the things that we do when we're growing up and we make all these choices in our lives that take us in all these directions, right? We're looking for a tribe. We're looking for a brotherhood. We're looking for someone to fit in with. And sometimes we're just like, screw it, I don't care. There's that too. But we are innately, we're tribal beings. And so with the integration process, we have things that we built up in our community that we know that is really important. We have ongoing workshops, somatic workshops, and different workshops that help people deal with what they're going through. A community of other members who are going through the same things.
We have our monthly fire talks,
which are like Zoom calls like this, breathwork classes and different things like that. And
we're always looking to improve. That's the fun thing. We get to, we've only been working. We've started this community almost in September. It'll be 2 years. So. It's a learning process, right? It's like, what can we do to just make things more fun, make things more enjoyable, make things, feel, I don't want to say easier, but more like ease in that process, because it's really hard when we tear down walls. And we have to be really careful. And this is something we're trying to make really clear to people, is we're really good at knowing what we want to get rid of. People are really good. They come and they say, I want to get rid of my addiction. I want to get rid of my negative thinking. I want to get rid of, whatever. But they're not always good at really realizing what that, then what? What do you want instead? Like, where do you want to go? Like, okay, so you get rid of your addiction. So now what? What are you doing that helps you cope? What are you doing that helps you feel connected? What are you doing that when you feel overwhelmed, you have an avenue to go down that's healthy to help you, decompress and until you can, deal with whatever it is that's coming up against you. So, like, there's all these things, and we're always like, well, what do we want to replace the things we want to get rid of with? We have to know that ahead of time, because, and ask for it. Ask the medicine, not just, I want to get rid of my addiction, but I want to know what it feels like to feel connected. I want to know what it feels like. The medicine will show you exactly what it feels like in the most crazy ways. And that's completely and totally individual to you. It's a beautiful process when we say, ask the medicine to help you, to let you know what it feels like to feel calm.
Or to feel joy. What does that feel like?
Joy. Yeah.
People are blown away with that.
We're afraid to ask for what we want. We're afraid to ask for the good things. It's like, we think that that's wrong. There's a bit of something in us that maybe it's from childhood, and maybe it's from, we don't want to look selfish, or we don't want to look like, I don't know, but we're afraid to ask. Like, I want to feel good.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I really like that. I mean, that's, again, it's getting into the deeper root of, it's an existential crisis too. A lot of times with addiction, it's once you clear the addiction or this addiction, there's another addiction that pops up, because you're not getting to the root of, like, why am I here? Why did all this happen to me? And I think that's a huge part of the psychedelics and Ibogaine and different psychedelics to help you to even clarify and answer some of those questions. And I don't know what ceremony it's going to be for you, but there's definitely, as you get into this deeper layers of yourself, and especially with PTSD and the deeper layers of that trauma, it's, you start to get to those roots of, like, oh, wow, there's a lot of pain here that I've held. But once that pain is gone, what is my identity? Once the pain, once my story I've been telling in my addiction recovery groups for 12 years is, like, no longer a big dramatic thing for you, what is next? And I think that's where that's the slippery slope of cross addictions and finding other addictions. And it's so easy to do that. And I think that finding that, like you said, it's like, you don't even have to be spiritual, but there's a spiritual component to these medicines, whether you like it or not. It shows you there's more. And I think for me, moving to Costa Rica, when I was in New Hampshire, I'd be in the forest 6 days a week. I try to get to the forest or the river, and even for 10 minutes, just to go visit, breathe. And here in Costa Rica, it's very clear when you see the Pacific Ocean and how powerful it is, especially when you get these really high tides and 15, 20-foot waves some days, and you get to see the power of the jungle, the power of the ocean. It's like, you realize how little you are. You're like, wow, what is, like, there's got to be more here, right? There's got to be more. And I think that's the more that, like, Ibogaine and different psychedelics can show you that, yeah, there is more. When you're in the present moment, that's everything. And now you can see, oh, here are my triggers. Here's the pain I still have. And here's the joy I like. Here's the dancing I like to do. Here's the activities I like to do. But what is my purpose? And what am I here to do? And I think it's such a, clear that you guys have found that, and I really think that if we could have, tribes and community, that would be nice. That's going to take a while maybe. But the whole point of having a psychedelic experience to show you there's more to life. There's more to what's possible. And then, of course, to remember, right? It's a lot of times it's just remembering. It's not about learning something new. And I think that's some of these medicines are remembrance, right? You're remembering these things.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And one of the things that we should remember when we're doing these medicines is, so when you're finished the experience, you're moving forward, there's something fresh, right? There's something clean about you. There's something that's vulnerable and kind of new. And we really need to be aware of that moving forward as we leave, let's say, the ceremonial space or treatment space and go back to our homes. And we need to treat ourselves like newborn babies. We really do. Because with with newborn babies, we don't just, oh, we're going to have a baby. Okay, no problem. Maybe we got rats in here, this and that. Especially if we're over here where we don't have to have rats and stuff. We make arrangements. So we paint the place, get the nursery ready, talk to the in-laws, don't smoke. If you're going to smoke, you got to wash your hands 3 times. All these different things. We set things up so it's nourishing for the baby when they get here. And so often, we enter these great big, amazing medicines for this real magical and real spiritual event. Then we just go back home, right into the muck, wonder why is our shoes dirty now? Why do we have mud up to our hips from our old filth? Because we didn't make things in a spot that's nourishment, that moves things away that aren't going to serve us. Even sometimes it's just temporary moving things away. until we get kind of settled in our newness coming from these experiences. It's so important to the longevity, to the fulfillment of the medicine, to your journey. Is having that respect for us so much that we're going to do this. Just treat ourselves like a newborn baby and take that time for extra compassion as we're bumping and tripping over all this shit that's in front of us, because it's still going to be there, and not to be too hard on ourselves, and to give ourselves extra love and compassion as we're transitioning in this new way of being, of remembering of who we are. And so that's a really important part of coming through with medicine. Treat yourself like a newborn baby.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, because you're a blank slate, right? You're a blank slate when you're a newborn baby. Maybe there's, who knows, spiritually what you're coming in with, but you're a blank slate essentially. And then people are programming you into thoughts, ideas, beliefs, and I think that that's a really critical time for people. And it's just like after a big session of psychedelic, right? It's a critical time. It's the neurogenesis, the neuroplasticity, you're wide open, especially with some of these bigger medicines. And whatever you put in during that time is going to start to be sealed in there for a little bit of time. And so I think that's these are the things that it's so interesting to think about being in 2025 with how advanced AI is, how advanced technology is, but yet we don't understand what really happens after an Ibogaine experience and how the brain and how the body is completely open to receiving, and how much it's open to receiving to be able to change those structure, the baseline, right? The actual things that you do all the time, and to interrupt it and to create new baselines. Like, how do we not understand that? But yet we have the most advanced AI, get to Mars, whatever. It's really interesting. So I think that these discussions are really important because, I feel that if we don't start to really get into that root meaning of why we're here and looking at these deeper structures, I think it's just going to be more AI. It's going to be more like, let me give all my power away to outside so that I can feel high off the TikTok video or get high off of AI telling me what to do. I feel like that's can be really the next wave that it's scary, instead of it being like, let's go back to like, okay, why did these tribes utilize these medicines? What are these here to teach us? And how can I learn about myself through them? I think it's like holding on to the, even just the sacredness of being human, are plant medicines, and medicines in general. It's like holding on to humanity, where humanity seems to be going in a direction where it's like, put a chip in me, let me scan my barcode in my wrist. I feel an advancement in the AI, but I want to see also that advancement of like, there's talks about taking the psychedelic effect out of psilocybin and giving or LSD and just giving the other components and taking out the psychedelic effect. And it's like, wow, this is a really interesting time we're in, to see that.
Yeah. And I think it's because we're trying to cram in something to like this all-encompassing thing of like mind, body, soul. And the medical community is trying to cram it into a system that only deals with body or only deals slightly with mind. They don't really understand. We don't really understand the mind. I mean, you can ask any psychiatrist, if they're honest, they're going to say, we don't really know. I mean, we know some things, but, we really don't know how it all works. And so we're always trying to take the authorities to be, the regulatory bodies often want to take the spirituality out because you can't regulate that. It's too hard. It's too abstract, right? You can't put rules on it. So this is the dilemma we're in when we're talking about these medicines. We want them to be safe. We want people to have safe spaces to be able to go. And right now, with the way human nature is, it seems to be we need rules and regulations to do that. But then we're also having to understand that what we're doing is beyond that. And it's finding that balance between allowing there to be room for that spiritual component, for that, deeper understanding of self, and then having some rules and protections there to protect that space. Mm-hmm. So we're in a really weird time, and I think things are getting more chaotic. I think we're in big transition as a species. It just seems that way. Maybe I'm sure we've been in them before, but maybe not at this scale because, communities were smaller back then. Yeah, so I think it's something we do regularly, and we transition and we move through, and it's hard and it's bumpy and it looks terrible, but there's also purpose in it. And I think the goal now is to continue to find your humanity in all of that. The goal now is to continue to find compassion, to continue to find, love and respect and kindness for one another when everything is trying to pull you away from that. And so, and I think we have a responsibility to that in a way, is just to say, look, let's be nice, let's play nice in the sandbox, And so I think it's just another shift, and AI is going to be part of our future in one way or another. So who knows? I don't think we can predict, but I think you're right. Coming back to nature, keeping our spirituality.
Yeah.
And we don't even know. The crazy thing is we can't even define consciousness.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Creating it.
Yeah. I think that's that can be freedom for people who don't want to have to become a scientist to understand the brain, just to know, though, the humility of the medical world, and that they don't know what consciousness is. They don't know a lot of these things. These are theories that are being established. And so to me, that's exciting, because it's like, you don't know. So we have more opportunity to know. And maybe in the next 5 years, maybe even with the help of AI, I don't know, maybe we'll be able to understand what's going on in the brain and the body with Ibogaine and 5-MeO-DMT and whatever, all these different molecules, which is exciting. I'm curious about your work now. You guys have dedicated a huge portion of your life to helping others. And now for the last 12 years, you guys have been serving Ibogaine and Iboga. So what is it like to work with you? So if someone was like, hey, I want to come to, do this retreat you guys have in Mexico. I know you guys have 2 retreats coming up, September and October. What is that like to come and work? How long is the retreat? What is that like to come and do a retreat with you guys?
So our retreats are based on 2 ceremonies, which would be like 2 flood dosings. It's over an 8-day period, right? But it all starts with, say, your decision, Jesse, to do medicine. And so we'll have a face-to-face, and we'll talk and see why it is you're wanting to come to medicine. And here's the thing. When someone, like yourself, decides, I'm going to come do medicine, the medicine starts. Right then, the unraveling starts. Things start coming up. And when you thought things were all put to bed years ago. And that's the important part of it, right? We put people through a rigorous pre-screening. We have lots of background in medical, and it's really important to have and establish a good baseline systemically. So there's a lot of blood work we do. There's an EKG, and there's all those components that we make sure that things are good. There's a lot of things that are hidden, and we don't know that we're not healthy sometimes. It doesn't happen very often, but at the same time, it does happen. So we look through that. We help people walk through and get prepared. So in our community, we have a preparation community. We have a preparation workbook that helps people get ready, learn about intentions, helping with journal prompts, and different programs and interactions with the other team members and the other people coming to the medicine as well. And then when a person comes to the medicine, like I say, we have like an 8-day 2 ceremonies, and that includes, things like, spiritual baths or cleansings, as well as other components that go through it. And then, round the clock, medical care, and counseling 24/7. It's ongoing. And then moving forward after that that's where all the hard, heavy lifting starts. With the integration process, and that starts right away. And we have integration, we call it integration playbook, where this is your playbook. This is it. You've come through halftime and we're ready to go now. And it helps you move through and get ready and keep moving through life, And it's like this medicine is a long arc medicine. It doesn't just stop. It just goes. A year from now, you're going to have these aha moments like, oh, whoa, yeah, I remember, wow, that's what it is. And it happens all the time, So that's, kind of a really little gist of how we work with this coming forward. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's exciting. Yeah, I think that, I have a lot of curiosity in the arc of my journey with medicine, but I think there's many listeners who are also curious, especially with, Texas, the $50 million in Texas for more research and Ibogaine with veterans. And it's becoming more of like, whoa, Ibogaine, I'm hearing more about Ibogaine. And I think I've been very curious, since my first interviews with some others about Ibogaine. It's been a really interesting call. And like many people, I take my time with it. I don't rush. I kind of let what's happening in my world unfold and the people coming in. And that's what, if anyone's listening, it's like, if you're hearing this and Ibogaine is pulling at your gut, it's probably time to at least reach out to Patrick and Michelle and see what that is, because I feel like maybe Ibogaine doesn't get the respect it deserves. Like there's a lot of other medicines you hear a lot about, and I'm glad to see Ibogaine coming up more and more and more. And I think it's something that, one of the things that I'm careful of not to speak to something I don't have experience with. And I feel there's so many in this space, even like when you think of ketamine clinics popping up everywhere, and there's many people who have no experience with psychedelics who open up ketamine clinics. And it's I guess, it's serving a purpose for people to find that, but it's kind of scary because what are people going to navigate on high doses of ketamine? They're going to have psychedelic experiences, potentially. They're going to be potentially spiritual experiences or traumatic. And I feel that it's really important to work with practitioners and people who have the experience, who've been through destabilizing experiences, who've been through critical situations, how to respond, what's the emergency response. And people don't think about this, they're just like, all right, give me it. I want to do this. And I want it to be, it's like, okay, there's a lot here, right? There's a lot of prep. There's a lot of pre-integration. And I think that's huge. And I really think that's what differentiates you guys with this. It's your experience is extensive. And I think people would feel really safe doing medicine and your background and the certifications you have. To me, it just brings a lot of credibility into the space because safety is number one. And that's it. And safety is number one. And if it's not safe, then you shouldn't do it. And if you're not ready, you shouldn't do it. And I think that, that's my number one concern when I talk to this space is keeping people safe, because people die. I mean, people die on Tylenol, people die on SSRIs, they die with many things, but you can definitely have, an experience on Ibogaine and other psychedelics, but Ibogaine, and it's critical that we do the pre-screening, the blood testing, all the things that you said. And I'm really glad that you start with that as your background as nurses. And, it's just so important, especially with something so big as an Ibogaine.
It is, and here's this medicine, Iboga, Ibogaine, it's safe. It's a safe medicine. All the stories we hear, it's a safe medicine. Where we run into problems isn't the medicine of Iboga. It's the human component that goes with it. Whether we're not healthy, haven't been pre-screened properly, we have underlying conditions, comorbidities, or we're on different medications, or hey, we're just on some regular fancy little herbal drinks, like, that can interfere with it. This is people forget this is not just a fad. It's not just plant medicine. We're like, we do some plant medicine. We're going to have a great time. We're going to get enlightened. That's great. You're doing real medicine. Medicines come from these things originally.
Modern medicine.
Modern medicines do. These are real medicines. So we need to treat them like that. You don't normally, we don't just go, yeah, I'm feeling a little anxious. I think my blood pressure's up. Oh, hang on. Grandma's got some blood pressure pills. They help her. I'm just going to take some of hers because that's going to help me. It helps her. It's going to help me. We don't do that normally because there's real ramifications with it. Likewise with this. Once again, it's the human component of it. Yeah. Does this medicine affect, the QT prolongation, which is just the active refilling of the heart after the heartbeat? Yes, it does. But so does a lot of regular over-the-counter medications and supplements. Does it give us a boost of serotonin and dopamine and make us feel really good? Yeah. But so you get boosts from 5-HTP and all these other things too for serotonin. And on their own, they're fine. But the interaction is the part we have to really be careful for.
Yeah.
So once you establish that, and you're closely monitoring, you have understanding of the critical components of the body and how it interacts. Not just that, I'm just giving something and that's good. My nursing teacher told me when I started way back 30 years ago, any monkey can give a pill. Mm-hmm. Any monkey can give a pill. You can teach them to do that. But it's understanding how it goes in the body and how the body reacts to it. So when we are giving medicine, it's not just milligram per kilogram and it's just a cookie cutter. It's we titrate to effect on everything. And, with us three here, Michelle may end up needing a whole lot more than us two big guys, before we have any effect. And it's just titrating to effect, this understanding. So it mitigates, the harm. We don't have to have that. Yeah. So we're really big components for that because of our backgrounds. And you're right. It's safety first. If it's not going to be safe, it's not the right time.
And even with other medicines, I've had these conversations with people, like even, ketamine, we talk about ketamine. And I say, well, if you're going to be serving ketamine, then you should make sure you know how to revive somebody. You should make sure you know how to, in case something goes wrong, because you don't always know that person and what they've done. And especially when, we're talking about like things where people are coming in for a ketamine massage or people are coming for, you know what I mean? And, they brought their own medicine. But there's like a disconnect there of like responsibility. At the end of the day, and I think it's probably something also we learn nursing is like, even though a doctor writes an order, I'm still responsible for the medicine I give. It doesn't matter if I give the exact medicine the doctor said. If there's an adverse event, I'm the first person they look at. Did I give that med appropriately? I have to know what I'm doing. I have to know what medicine I'm giving. I have to know why I'm giving it, who I'm giving it to. All these things. There's like 10 reasons, 10 things we're supposed to look at before we give a medicine. Are we giving that same consideration to plant medicines? Mm-hmm. And they're just as powerful, if not more so. Mm-hmm. So there's responsibility here. And sometimes we hear in the field some bypassing of that responsibility of like, oh, well, I'm just going to, spirit told me. I'm just guided by the medicine. No, that's not good enough. It's not good enough. If you want to serve medicine, then you study it. And you study all the things that happen around it. And you educate yourself. It doesn't always have to be formal. I'm not saying you have to go to university, but you should know what you're doing. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think that's, what we need to work on in the field is taking responsibility. It's not just, I went and I had an addiction and I got healed from this medicine. Now I'm going to serve it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There needs to be something in between that I got healed and now I'm going to serve. We need some training in there, and we need to make sure that you're finished healing.
Yeah, for sure.
And these are the hard talks that we have with people. I think one of the best compliments I ever got way back in the day was someone said, my name came up and they said, Patrick, he's really good what he does, but I don't know, sometimes he's a little cautious. I'm like, thank you.
Yeah.
Because you don't know what sideways is until you've seen it. And we don't want to see sideways.
Yeah.
But even with all this talk, and it's really serious. It's really serious talk. The one thing that this medicine tells us, when we have people, they've asked over and over again, they'll ask the medicine, is life serious? And the medicine goes, no. I mean, yes, you need to be in intent. It's important. You need to have intent. You need to enjoy life. Life is not meant to be serious. It's meant to be enjoyed and have gratitude. And if we can remember to do that, then even in the darkest days, we can have, bright hearts and bright minds still, much like, the people in the villages in Gabon, where it's like it's third world. It's like something else. But, they're all happy. We see it when you travel around, these indigenous people who don't have a lot, they're super happy. They're present. They're in the moment. They're enjoying life. We just need to remember to do that.
Yeah, I really appreciate this kind of closing thought of safety, and it needs to be embodied, right? Like you can't convince me that you're a safe person by talking to me. I can feel your whole energy field. I can feel when something feels off. And people are gaslit oftentimes when they feel that. They're like, well, I'll trust that person. I'll just trust them because they have this degree or whatever. And it's like, I think that that's really important, that you can feel that and know that, man, I feel safe. And that was my experience with most of my journeys, especially the bigger journeys into 5-MeO-DMT. And I felt really safe, and I needed to know that. And I think that's so especially important for this medicine. So I'm really grateful you guys came into my path, and you guys are doing the work you're doing. And I'm sure that we're going to stay connected and probably even check in, maybe do another show and, in the future, so I can hear about how everything's unfolding and how those retreats went. And how do people reach you if they want to come and experience this medicine in September or October, or just even get involved in your community? How would they find you?
So our email is info@soulreflections.net. We're on social media, IG and Facebook, under Soul Reflections Iboga. You can find us there. You can just send us
on the website.
On our website, which is www.soulreflections.net. And there's buttons everywhere you can push to get in contact or whatever. And even if it's just to talk about your experience with the medicine from somewhere else, we just love to talk to people about the experiences they have. So it's not always about just coming to us. It's about sharing in community and being part of community. Super important for us.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, guys, thank you so much for coming on Entrepreneurs Recovery Podcast. And it was a joy to get to know you guys. I'm looking forward to get to know you even better as time unfolds. And certainly we'll reach out to you guys really soon about my own journeys and what I'm planning on. So thank you guys.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Pura Vida, Jesse.
Yeah, Pura Vida, absolutely. Thank you for checking out Entrepreneurs of Recovery Podcast. We are so appreciative that you are here. Make sure you go ahead and like and subscribe to the show on YouTube. Leave a review on iTunes and Spotify so more people can find the show. Once again, thank you so much. We have great episodes and content coming out in the future. Thank you for being here. Have a blessed day.